great to be with you. I enjoyed being with you on last night. I felt like God said to me, encourage them. So I hope the message last night was an encouragement. I felt like that was my mission that God gave me last night, was to be an encourager, and I hope you felt that way last night. Let me give you a couple of just little quick announcements. If you are interested, what I'm going to teach today is a tiny snip out of the National Institute of Christian Leadership, which I teach. I do all the teaching. You can take the course online, but I teach it live. I would love for you to come and be a part of the National Institute of Christian Leadership. The closest place where I teach it to you here geographically, though I know not everybody is here, but I teach it in Dallas, Texas, Orlando, Florida, and in the Atlanta, Georgia area. The closest one to you here, obviously, would be Dallas. I'd love for you to check it out. Go to thenicl.com. Don't leave out the article, the NICL. If you just put in nicl.com, it takes you to the National Chemistry Lab or something, unless you need drugs. But thenicl.com. I hope to talk with Pastor Steve about another possibility. We also do what are called private NICLs. And that is that an organization says, instead of some of our members going hither and yon, why don't you come and do it for us? And so I'd be happy to do one for Worldwide Evangelism. You're a great organization. I've done that. I've done private ones all over the United States and Australia, and so I'm delighted to do that. One other thing, something I help with as an outgrowth of the NICL, two things. One is I have someone, if you are struggling with, need help in church finance, getting financing, I have a guy that I recommend. I'm sure they're local banks, that kind of thing. The best church finance resource that I've been able to come up with. If you need church financing or refinancing or something like that, I have located this guy. I have gotten him to a lot of different churches, from small loans to multi-million-dollar loans. So if you need that, then contact me. I'm going to give you my email address in just a moment if you'll be ready with something to write. The other is I also do, on a small and personal level, placement. So if you need a youth pastor, or if you are a youth pastor and you need to not be a youth pastor, there just comes that moment where you realize, I no longer speak youth. But whatever it is, staff, senior pastors, churches, that is something I do. I love to do it. I do that as a part of an outgrowth of the NICL, and I'll tell you what our financial arrangement is on all that. And so here is my email address. It's mrutland@globalservants.org. mrutland@globalservants, and that's VANTS, servants. So a lot of people think they have emailed me because they send it to Global Service. It's globalservants.org, not .church, which you're used to. So .org. Enough of that. Now, I want to teach this morning. I'm going to see how I'm going to deal with time instead of content. So I'm going to do one thing. If I have time, I'll do the second thing. If not, we'll just do one. So if you have something to take notes with, and of course that sounds very arrogant that I think I have something worth taking notes on, but if you are taking notes, let me tell you what to write. I want you to write down vertically on a piece of paper 6 words in this order, if you will, please. I'm going to give them to you right now. And I'm going to divide this into a vertical axis and into 3 couplets of 2. But the words are the critical issue. So at the top of the page, write mission. Second, write vision. The third word is strategy. The fourth word is tactics. The fifth word is purpose. The last word is function. Mission, vision, strategy, tactics, purpose, function. On this vertical axis between mission and function, everything in leadership organizationally happens. It doesn't matter if you run a chain of hardware stores or a local Pentecostal church. All ministry, all leadership happens on this vertical axis. Furthermore, I believe that I can say to you that virtually all, if not all, crises in leadership happen because of three confusions, if you will. I call them confusions. Three places where the ship runs aground, three reefs where something goes wrong. And I believe that I do a lot of church consulting, and almost always I can find the place where one of these three has hit. So let me just work my way straight down through these. What I'm going to do is define each of the six, and then we'll take them two by two by two and talk about why the confusion of these words, the misapprehension of these causes problems and what problems they cause. Each one causes a different problem. The first one then is the confusion between mission and vision. Mission is, I believe, is one of the most misunderstood and misapprehended of all leadership mantras. And I know that what I'm going to say now is controversial. I know it is because I read and see enough enough leadership teaching to where I know it is not what is commonly taught. And I want you to know that when you say, wow, that's not what I was taught. I know it probably wasn't what you were taught because it isn't what I was taught. And I know a lot of people disagree with me. In the rapture, they will see that I was right. But at this moment, I just want to say, I'm not laying this on you like the law of the Medes and the Persians. I just want you to think about it. I believe that the overemphasis on mission actually causes churches to stagnate. That mission, there is no energy in mission. There's no vitality. That's not where it happens. Mission is a police statement. I don't mean the cops. It polices the rest of the vertical axis that I've just given you. It is the set of core values and truths to which your ministry is attached, but it doesn't push anything forward. The energy is always in vision. That's where the vitality happens. So churches which at the top in leadership just seem like they talk mission, they preach mission, they emphasize mission, but it isn't going anywhere. There doesn't seem to be any vitality. There's a stagnation. There's a lack of vitality. It is always because they have placed mission in the place of vision. Mission has to be at the top because it presides. I said police. It is a presiding statement, a policing statement over the rest. The mission statement is what keeps you from fulfilling your mission, from fulfilling your vision in the wrong way. But the vision is where the energy is. So let me give you an example. Go back to your elementary school catechism when you took that. What is the mission of the people of God? The people of God are to know God and love Him and enjoy Him forever. So that's the mission of God. But there's no direction in that. Do you see what I'm saying? That's a state of being. That presides what we're supposed to be like, okay? So let's take the Hebrew children in bondage in the land of Goshen, 430 years. Could they technically fulfill that mission? Let me just say this to you. If I could give you a leadership hint, turn your phone off before you get on the platform. It's just a thought in passing. I don't know why that popped into my mind as it buzzed on my hip. Excuse me for that. So 430 years in slavery in the land of Goshen. Could the Hebrew people fulfill that mission that while they're in bondage? Could they love God as slaves? Could they know Him and enjoy Him? They could, right? But you can do that and remain in slavery physically. What Moses cast for them was not a new mission. When they got to the Holy Land, their mission remained the same. Whether in the land of Goshen or in Eretz Israel, their mission is still to know God and love Him. What moved them from Egypt to Israel was vision. He showed them a vision. He painted a picture. He didn't just say over yonder. He said the land that flows with milk and honey, the land which God promised to our forefathers, that land that flows with milk and honey, that land which has been preserved for us. So what moved them from Egypt to Israel was vision. When vision begins to become less, the energy drains out of the whole organization. And as a result, often people continue to pound mission. The problem is that mission can, I'm looking around to make sure before I say this, mission can degenerate into a banner in the auditorium, a plaque on the wall. And we just keep preaching it, teaching it, talking it, hoping that talking mission will do something. So let's suppose here there's a church somewhere and the mission statement is to save the lost, sanctify the saved, and send the sanctified. That's the mission, okay? It's on plaques all over the building, everything. And they have a change of pastors, and I come in as the new pastor, and these 5 folks right here on the front row are the staff that I've inherited from the previous pastor. And so I say to them, here's your mission statement, I've seen it, save the lost, sanctify the saved, send the sanctified. There's your mission statement, great. I want to share with you the vision that I have. Last Sunday, and for the last 5 years, you've been averaging 500 in Sunday morning service. Next Sunday, I have a vision of 5,000. I want 5,000 people in this auditorium next Sunday. I know what all 5 of you are thinking. He's psychotic. We cannot possibly do that. That's not possible. It is not only possible, it's easily done. And here it is. We will cannibalize the entire church budget. We will buy a full-page color ad in the daily newspaper every day that says, this Sunday at our church, free beer and topless go-go girls. How many of you know we're going to have 5,000? 3,500 of them are going to be Associated Press, but we're going to have 5,000, right? Why can't we fulfill that vision that way? Because of the mission statement. It's inconsistent with the mission statement. But all the years I've been averaging 500 or 500 and then 480 and then 460 and then 440 and then 430, and I'm refusing to look at that decline in average attendance, I've been pounding mission. But vision is exactly what it sounds like. Vision is when I look a year, 5 years, 10 years down the road, what do I see? That's what vision is. What do I see financially? You should divide the vision of your church up into fingers. You need a financial vision. I see 5 years from now that our annual budget is such and such. I see 5 years from now that we're able to hire a full-time worship leader or whatever it is. That's the issue with vision, is that it's size appropriate. That a small church can have a dynamic, moving, engaging, encouraging, and exciting vision. It may not be the vision that Jensen Franklin has, or Robert Morris, but without vision, their church stagnates. It just stagnates at a high altitude. So vision is location specific. So there's nothing wrong with it. Now the problem is that when we start talking only mission, you can't forget the mission, because the mission is what keeps you from having free beer and topless go-go girls. There's nothing wrong with the vision. The vision is to have 5,000 people in church. There's nothing wrong with that vision. It's how we get there. The mission keeps us from getting there that way. So that's where there is stagnation at the leadership level. It's because vision has faded and mission, and the organization continues to pound mission. All right? The second couplet is the confusion between strategy and tactics. Strategy is the comprehensive set of goals and plans, which, if they are fulfilled, will further the vision. So strategy is the comprehensive set of goals and plans, which, if they are fulfilled, will further the vision. Tactics are the short-term response to an immediate crisis or need. Now, I'm going to say this. Nobody in this room, but in other churches, in galaxies far, far away, there are churches that live at the tactical level. And it is part of the ongoing problem is that they live at the tactical level. They just fix stuff. Let me give you an example. There's a hostage crisis in downtown Atlanta, okay? Some nutcase is holed up in a hotel room on the 14th floor with a woman and 2 kids, and he's threatening to kill them. The police are down in the street trying to figure out how to deal with this. What do? Do they negotiate? Do they turn the heat and water off in the hotel and try to freeze him out? Do they put a sniper on the rooftop across the street and bust a cap in his sorry hide? How do they handle it? That's all tactics. Meanwhile, in the mayor's office across town, she's meeting with 30 clergy persons. She's meeting with the head of Parks and Recreation, the school superintendent, and the chief of police, and they're trying to come up with a 10-year plan to reduce crime in the city. That's strategy. Many, many churches live their whole lives at the tactical level. Why? It's because it gives them an immediate short-term feeling of accomplishment. So the pastor leaves his study to head to this auditorium to preach. He is prayed up, studied up, and ready to preach. And as he leaves his study to head to the auditorium, somebody meets him in the hallway and says, "Pastor, the toilet in the women's bathroom is stopped up." And he says to himself, "I am not too good. The man of God is humble. I will fix the toilet." So he fixes the toilet, and on the way home from church, he says to himself, I don't know if one thing happened in that sermon, if one life was touched, one soul stirred, one marriage encouraged, but bless God, that toilet in the women's bathroom works. That short-term payoff can actually become addictive. And I'm going to tell you the very terrifying news. Crisis-addicted boards of churches. How many of you have I don't know what your governance pattern would be. You have a board of elders or a board of deacons or a board of directors or trustees. How many of you have something like that at your church? Listen to Dr. Mark. If you don't hear anything else this whole morning, hear this one. Tactical boards can become crisis-addicted. It gives them a sense of meaning and identification and purpose so that after a while, if there is no crisis, they will create one. They will actually generate a crisis because fixing the crisis is what makes them feel meaningful. So if you're constantly, look, if the roof leaks, you have to fix it. I'm not saying you can't deal with a crisis. I'm not saying you can't deal with a tactical issue. That's tactical. The roof is leaking. Okay, you have to fix it. But it is the responsibility of visionary leadership to constantly say to everybody, yes, we're fixing the roof, but it's not what we do. We're just dealing with this right now, but don't forget, in 5 years, we're going to be there. We're going to be doing that. We're going to be moving there. Yes, right now, we have left Egypt. And the Amalekites are bearing down on us. We got to whoop these Amalekites. But God did not call us into the desert to whoop Amalekites. This is an immediate tactical issue. The strategic issue is Israel. Why did the first generation that left Egypt fail? They lost their vision. They resorted to tactics. What do we eat? Where do we drink? And they said, we had all that stuff back in Egypt. So the next crisis level, the next confusion level is between strategy and tactics. Churches that live at the tactical level just fix stuff. And so as a result, they're waiting for stuff to fix. The third confusion is at the very bottom. And this is where customer service gets damaged. And if you're offended with the word customer service, remember I teach this to businesses. I'm about to teach it next week in Iceland. I'm leaving Friday for Iceland. I'll be there 10 days. I'm going to teach with one group with churches and one group with Icelandic, I guess we say Icelandic, Icelander, something, I don't know, Icelandic businesses. And I can teach this same thing in a business, a high-tech Icelandic business, or I can teach it in a local church. And it is this, and that's the confusion between function and purpose. And this is where customer service gets damaged. Don't be offended with the word customer. If you don't like that, then change it. This is your, walk-in traffic coming to your church customer thing. When that person comes on your campus for the first time, they will sense almost immediately if your organization has lost purpose and is operating only at the functional level. So it's just as simple as this. Function is what I do. Purpose is why I do it. This began to come to me before I went into the ministry I coached, and this began to come to me in coaching football. Is that there's a connection, a direct connection between purpose and function, and if you lose it, you actually can do internal damage. So I've got a 245-pound offensive tackle whose shoe size exceeds his IQ. And I say, all right, now listen to me, Bubba. When the ball snaps, when that ball moves, you go over there and hurt that boy. So the ball snaps, go hurt him, okay? And then we run an off-tackle slant. And he knocks his man into our tailback and knocks our tailback down, and he fumbles the ball. I say, all right, Bubba, this is not on you. This is on me. I did not make it clear. The reason you're going to go over there and hurt that boy is so that the little guy who can actually run is going to go around you. So if we run off tackle right, you hurt him left. If we run off tackle left, you hurt him right. Sandwich hand, milk hand. Because I have to connect what he does with how that fits into the strategic plan. So how does it work in a local church? Good old Uncle Bob. Every church has one. Good old Uncle Bob. He has cooked hot dogs for the church youth group every Wednesday night for 37 years. He's never even taken a vacation. He's the most faithful, loyal volunteer in the whole church. 37 years. He's never missed a Wednesday night cooking hot dogs for the youth group. And then the church has the sheer unmitigated audacity to hire a new youth pastor. And the youth pastor makes the mistake of asking the youth whether they like hot dogs on Wednesday night. And they say, we don't want hot dogs on Wednesday night, we want pizza. So this naive and well-meaning youth pastor goes to Uncle Bob and he says, we're not going to have hot dogs anymore on Wednesday night. We're going to bring in 5 boxes of pizzas. All I need you to do, open the first box, slice them up, put one piece on a paper plate, and the kids come through, hand them one piece, and if there's any left over, let them come back through and get a second piece. And Uncle Bob says, let me just say this to you, hell will freeze before he said, I do not have the pizza anointing. have the hot dog unction. I will not serve. And the youth pastor says, yeah, but see, the kids don't want hot dogs. And Bob says, I don't care. What I do is cook hot dogs. The little brats can just eat them. Because Bob has forgotten that 37 years ago, somebody said, you know what we ought to do? Let's make Wednesday night more fun for the kids. Let's have a dinner here. Why don't we, you know what they'd like? Hot dogs. Somebody could come in early, just boil some hot dogs, put them in the buns. Who would do that? And Bob said, I love the kids. I'll do it. He's forgotten that moment. He now owns as his possession what he does. And he has forgotten why. I can show you in business. I go into the First National Bank and I want to cash a check. There's a plaque on the wall that says the mission of this bank is to make our customers' dreams come true. And I walk up to the nice lady at the window and I say, I'd like to cash this check. She says, I need your passport, the footprint of your firstborn male child, and 3 other forms of identification. I said, well, I don't have those things. I don't have that. I just want to cash the check. She said, I'm not cashing that check. Not only that, if you don't leave my window, I'm calling security. I said, yeah, but see, that plaque says that the mission of this bank is to make my dreams come true. And right now, my dream is to cash this check. There is a policy manual somewhere in a drawer. There's a procedure manual. There's all of that is covered. There's a president somewhere in an office. There's a vice president. There's all of that. For the walk-up customer, none of that matters. Policy is being made on the spot. The mission, function, vision of that bank is clear to me. That bank exists for itself. They don't care about me. They don't care about what I do. And that bank's whole, everything from function up disappears at the point of customer interaction. Everything is lost. The only thing I know about that bank is that person right there. This goes to your lowest level volunteer. Your lowest level volunteer. People say to me all the time, I hear this, well, you can't fire a volunteer. Listen to me, guys. If you can't fire a volunteer, you're in bondage to your poorest performer. The whole church sinks to the level of your poorest performer. You gotta be able to go out to the parking lot crew, people out there parking cars. And you say, Bob, we need you to be nice. I need you teach him. You try to remind him. You want to encourage people. You want to help people. You try to re-educate them. You try to retrain them. All of those things. But finally, ultimately, you have to be able to say, Bob, you can't be on the parking crew anymore. You can't do this. People come into church, their hands are shaking. They're mad. We don't need this. He said, Pastor, I park more cars than anybody else on the team. He said, yeah, Bob, but we can't have you out here waving a gun around. So, give me your yellow vest and your flashlight. It's over. You've got to be able to. Because for the single mother who shows up with 2 toddlers and he's yelling at her, you can't park there. She's decided who you are, what the mission vision of this church is, and who God is. And there's nothing that you can do in the pulpit to overcome that. The plaque on the wall means nothing. It's your walk-up customer service is damaged right there. So it's constant. You have to constantly teach on the connection between what you do and why you do it. At every level. At the lowest level, that is what you teach, is purpose. At the lowest level, what you teach is purpose. So, you say to the lady who greets people in the lobby, look, don't let people bring babies into the church. They need to take the babies down to the nursery. When they arrive with babies, get the babies down to the nursery. So a lady comes in out of the rain. She's got a 2-year-old hanging onto the edge of her skirt, and she's got a baby on her hip. And the woman in the lobby says, you can't take that baby in the auditorium. The pastor hates babies, and so does Jesus. So just get those babies to the nursery. Did she do what you told her to? Yes, she did, right? She has forgotten why. So what you have to teach is not just the what, but the why. You have to teach. What I want you to say is, look at those beautiful babies. And you came in out of the rain, you got them dressed and got here. You need to go into the auditorium and enjoy a service without those babies crying. Come with me. I'm going to walk you down to some of the nicest nursery workers that have ever been on the face of the planet. And they're going to care for these babies and take care of them, and you can have a worship service. Listen to me. The single mother who comes to your church, listen to Dr. Mark, she actually doesn't care whether you preach or not. She just wants a moment with adults. And if you can supply her with that, and supply her with that in a gorgeous one, I was the president of 2 different universities. Do you know the groups that I had to teach the most constantly? The security guards. I had to constantly deal with the security guards and say, look, you can't scream at a 17-year-old co-ed. You can't park there. Are you blind? Don't you see it's red? I said, that's not what I want. I said, but they can't park there. That's the fire zone. I said, no, they can't park there. But here's what I want you to say. Hey, honey, your dad sent you off here to college with a beautiful new car. Oh, that's gorgeous. And if you park it there, the likelihood is it's going to get scratched and your dad's going to be so mad. I'm going to get in my little golf cart here, and you get in the car and follow me, and I'm going to show you where to park that'll be convenient to some of the classrooms and won't get your car scratched, and your dad won't be mad at you. That's the same thing as screaming, you can't park there. But that's what I want. People forget why they do stuff. I have a security guard who thinks it's his job to lock the buildings. If your job is to lock the buildings, the people who want to get in them are the bad people, right? So 8 o'clock at night in a snowstorm, some teacher calls the guard shack and says, building 3 is locked. I've got 30 kids here that have an 8 o'clock class. And the guard says, I just locked that building. She says, see, I know. I'm here. I know it's locked. And we're getting snowed on. I need in there. Gets in his golf cart, goes through the snow over there, unlock. Because he thought his job was to lock the building. So I used to say all the time, your job is not to protect the university from the students. Your job is to protect the students from the boogeyman. But none of these kids is the boogeyman. We don't know who the boogeyman is. But your job is to protect them from them, right? So the lady who cleans your Sunday school classes on Monday morning, she comes in and finds little bits of crayon and construction paper cut up. The little chairs are turned all every which way. And she says, oh, look at this. I just got this clean. I just got this clean. She thinks her job is to keep the room clean. The people who mess it up are the bad people, right? So what you've got to convince her of is your job is not to keep this room clean. Your job is to prepare an atmosphere where creative, high-energy children's ministry can happen, which is messy. So she comes in and says, oh, look at these little chairs all turned. I had them all in a row. Why can't they put them back? I don't know. Maybe because they're 4. So what you've got to train her is to walk in that room and say, oh, look, ministry happened here. I got this ready, and look what happened. Secondly, she needs to see is, whoa, job security. Now, that's the vertical axis. A vertical axis between mission and function is just like a column of figures. I ought to be able to add it up or down and get the same sum. So I ought to be able to meet the people who greet folks in the lobby of your church and tell you something about how you understand the mission of this church. And I ought to be able to see the plaque that you have on the wall. See all the people, I'm not saying there's wrong with a mission statement. I'm just saying that churches, organizations, universities, big businesses spend thousands of dollars hiring consultants and doing focus groups and piecing together and cobbling together some mission statement. And it winds up just being a plaque on the wall. Love God, love people, don't kick puppies, and it just hangs on the wall. And it doesn't do anything. It doesn't go anywhere. The power is in vision. So let me conclude with these two things. The first is this. Okay. How do I say this? I'm trying to say this. The lead pastor, the president of the company, the CEO, whoever that is, the vision has to reside there. You can delegate everything else. What you can't delegate is vision. Where vision originates, that's where the power is, and that's where the future is. So what you want to watch for, everybody's always in the ministry. Look, I'm probably the oldest guy in the room here, but as we start to get a little further along, you know, you find yourself touching to see, am I still alive? You know, what you want to touch is not your carotid artery. What you want to touch is your vision. Do I still have vision for this? Not do I still believe in the mission. Not am I still doing the stuff I did when we planted this church. Do I have or can I recapture vision? The real deal in leadership is vision. The second thing is this. Having said that, the real deal for your customers is at the bottom of the thing. So for leadership, the crisis is at the top. For the customer, the crisis is at the bottom. So let me stop and say this, and then I'll be finished with this part. I hope this is useful to you in some way. Make the vision yours, make it specific, and make it appropriate for your church. Your vision doesn't have to be Robert Morris's vision. It's the vision of your church. And I can drive up in front of a church. After 50 years of ministry, I can drive up in front of a church and I can almost smell vision. If you can't, you take over as the lead pastor of some little country church with the steeples crooked and little white frame church and all that kind of thing. You can't fix everything. You can't fix everything. Plant the flower beds. Fix the flaming sidewalk. Paint the building. Do something. Keep it moving. I see what you want to communicate is, I see us at this place in 5 years. I see us having this. I see us having that. That back parking lot that people park in the mud every time it rains, my vision, I see it paved. I see it full of cars. I see this empty section of pews and that empty balcony. I see them full of people. I see our finances at this level. I see us being able to hire 2 more full-time staff. And we're going to do what we have to do strategically to get to that place. Furthermore, I'm going to keep pushing the vision horizon back. I'm going to keep moving it back. One of the problems as we start to get older is I get to the vision that I wanted and I camp there because my dreams have come true. You need to keep pushing it back. The power, the drive, the energy, the vitality is all in vision. Amen? Amen. You understand that? I'm not asking if you agree. I really don't care. But I'm just asking if you understand, okay? Now, I'm just looking at the time. It's just 10 o'clock. I covered that in the time I wanted to. So what I'd like to do is this. I'd like to go on to the second one. If you have questions, my goal in teaching is to confuse an audience to the place where they don't know what to ask. It relieves any responsibility for me from response. But if you have any questions, if you hold those, and then let me do the second one, and then we'll take the Q&A. Let me make sure I understand. I'm supposed to do Q&A at 10:30. Release at 10:30. And come back at 10:45 and do okay, all right. Oh, good. This is great. We're on time. Write in your diary, Dr. Rutland quit on time. It's important to me. I'd like the word of that to get around. Okay. I want to talk to you about a horizontal axis now. That's a vertical axis. I want to speak on a horizontal continuum, if you will. And that is the continuum between chaos and control. Don't put moral or emotional value to either of these terms. One is not good and one is not bad. If you're a control freak, chaos sounds evil. If you're a chaos agent, control feels like restriction. But they are not value-laden words. They are diagnostic words. So let me give you an example. Chaos, when all the nuclear particles, anything, are all just moving at total random and crashing into each other, what do you call that? What happens? Yeah, an atomic bomb, okay? That's what atomic fusion is. You shoot particles into each other and bust them up, okay? So total chaos is an atomic bomb. What if all the nuclear material in your body all stopped at a given moment? What do we call that? Yeah, death. So all leadership happens on a continuum between atomic explosion and death. Now the problem is that as we, in accordance with our own personality, our own inner self, each of us feels more comfortable on one of those extremes than the other. So there are people that feel pretty comfortable right up next to an atomic bomb. They kind of like that, okay? They thrive there. There are other people who are not dead, but they're really comfortable in the lobby of a morgue. All leadership happens between those two extremes. Now, I want you to envision that you are doing leadership as the senior executive, senior pastor. Where are the lead pastors? Will you raise your hand if you have any energy at all? That's, God, try to say something helpful. All right. So I want you to imagine, and if you're a youth pastor, the same thing is true for your youth group. If you're there, this is for everything. All right. So imagine that you have roller skates on, but the wheels are turned sideways. And there is a wooden skating ramp this way, sideways. Over here is death, over there is atomic explosion. And you are here, skating sideways, responding to changes in ambiance or atmosphere. As objects come at you, you move this way or that way, so that you are constantly moving between chaos and control, depending on what is called for at the moment. The problem is twofold. Everybody on your team fits in one of these categories or the other. And the other problem is you also fit in one of these categories. So you are leading out of your own natural proclivity for chaos or for control. And you are leading people whose either natural proclivity is one of these or their function is one of these. And those that are in this camp and those that are in this camp think everybody in the other camp is evil. And you are like Ben-Hur in the chariot You're trying to keep all these thoroughbreds. You've hired good people, big people. They're all champions. They all want to run. But you've got to keep them all in the traces. And there are some times when you have to guide them over toward control. And sometimes you have to guide them over to chaos. And that fluctuation in responsive, in flex leadership feels wrong to somebody on your team all the time. And here's the second problem. Nobody sees the situation like you do. This is a fairly mature group. I like teaching people who have a little bit of history. I was talking to a high school group the other day, and I said something about Gary Cooper. And this little girl raised her hand and said, Dr. Mark, who's Gary Cooper? I said, well, he's dead now. He was a great movie star in my parents' generation. I said he was sort of, and in my early childhood, I said he was sort of like the Clint Eastwood of that generation. She said, Dr. Rutland, she said, who's Clint Eastwood? I said, just shut up. So it's nice here to have a little more. Anybody here ever see the old black and white classic movie called The African Queen with Humphrey Bogart and Katharine Hepburn? Oh, thank God, Christians. Okay, for those of you who haven't seen it, I urge you, go somewhere to a video library and check it out and watch it. It's really a classic. It's wonderful. The African Queen is neither an African nor a queen. It's a boat. And Humphrey Bogart is the captain of this little boat on the Yolanga River in the start of World War I. And he has got a passenger on board who's a kind of a prunish old missionary woman, a single missionary old maid, Katharine Hepburn. Well, it's highly predictable. They clash and they argue and everything, and then finally they fall in love and they get married and all the rest of it. But this journey down the Yolanga, one of the things in the movie that's fascinating is the two of them will be chugging along on the river and talking or drinking tea or whatever it is, and all of a sudden, Humphrey Bogart will get up and kick the engine. Just kick it like that. Or he'll grab a spanner, what do you call it in America? A wrench. He'll grab a wrench and just clobber the engine. Why? Nobody hears the engine like you do. They don't get paid to hear the engine like you do. Even the church administrator doesn't hear it like you do. Even the money guy doesn't hear it. Nobody hears the engine like you do. Why? Because it's your job. It's not their job. So, there will be times when you have to do the exact opposite of what you did in the last phase of your church life. There are times when you just, and part of it is analytical, part of it is actually, I can give you some things, but part of it is intuitive, and I can't teach that. But part of it is actually analytical. If the attendance is down, the energy's down, the finances are down, you need some vitality. What's the opposite of all those things? Life. If those things are beginning to feel a little bit like death, what do you need? Chaos. So that's when you crank it up, make some mistakes, do some stuff. But there are control agents in your church and on your staff who are not afraid of death. They feel pretty comfortable. Look, the nicest ministry in the whole world is cemetery maintenance. Everybody's there. You just mow around the graves and go to lunch. Nobody's angry, right? You don't ever have to vote on anything. You just, right? So there are people who like that. And they get everything kind of quiet. So the gradual decline toward death that is inherent in ultra control, they may not only not be sensitive to it, they may not even worry about it. It may feel comfortable to them. So when you start to introduce chaos into the thing, when you start to crank it up, they know exactly who's coming. They know what the money's going to look like, what the budget's going to look like. They know the staff. They know the issues. They know the problems. And you suddenly bring 50 new people into the church. You've messed everything up. That looks great to you. 50 new people looks good to you. The person who finally figured out exactly how many ushers we need, and now all of a sudden, we got a whole nother section of people over here. I got to get 5 more ushers. That's the voice of control. You see what I'm trying to say? So, if your youth pastor and the guy who runs your senior citizens ministry look, talk, act, and walk exactly alike, you may be in lockdown. On the other hand, if it's been 2 or 3 years since you've seen your youth pastor, what about Howard? Does he still work here? You may be in the extremes of chaos. So there are times when the whole engine just feels like it's grinding down. Then you grab a wrench and open all the valves. Then there are times when it just feels like the engine is just shaking. Then you have to grab a wrench and tighten it up. And that flexibility means that somebody on your team is going to be mad at you all the time. And if you can't deal with that, you cannot lead 21st century flex leadership. The freer you are, the more frequently somebody is going to feel you won't play by the rules. Your chaos agents will resent introduction of control. Your control people may actually feel that they're actually going to be slightly more of a problem, because when you start to introduce chaos, the chaos people don't like the control mechanisms because it's a shoe that pinches. But the control people, when you start to introduce a little chaos, they may feel that it's actually compromise. What is legalism? Legalism is theological control. So when you start to open the valves a little bit over here, your issue here is going to be that you may actually be accused of compromise. The issue here is going to be, look, when you plant a church, it's chaos cathedral. Right? That's what you have to have, chaos. You don't need mechanisms, control systems. It's just you and your brother-in-law and his wife and kids and yours. And you rent the Veterans of Foreign Wars hall, and you say to your 10-year-old, put the banner that says holiness unto the Lord over the bingo numbers. Unless you let your toddler pick up the beer bottles and set up the drums over there, and you give your 8-year-old the sticks and say, figure it out, sport. You're the drummer. Isn't that right? Okay, then you go 50, and then you go to 100, and then you go to 150, and then you're at 300, and suddenly you and your brother-in-law and 2 others are sitting somewhere, and you say, okay, I need you to take this, and you do this, and you take that. I guarantee you, somebody's going to say, you've changed. This is not the way we started. Staff meeting, when we got started, we sat in our house with coffee and our feet on the coffee table, and we told jokes. And this doesn't feel like that at all. You've changed. And they mean it accusationally. And that's when you have to say, I have changed. I have changed. Here is the problem. The problem is not that I've changed. The problem is that you haven't. There are people that are high-octane chaos agents that are. This sounds awful, but I'm going to tell you, they are useful to you, important to you at the beginning of the chaos phase, and they cannot make the trip to control. They can't make it. When you start to tighten the valves, they'll bail out. They will leave, and you have to say, there's a time, okay, go to business. I think sometimes when I talk ministry, it makes people tense. You own a company, and you got a salesman that sells 500 units a month. But the people in accounting hate his guts because he never turns in his expense account on time. He gets the addresses wrong on the orders. He shows up late. He won't come to meetings. They hate him. And they will come to you and they'll say, you got to get rid of this guy. He's horrible. And that's when you have to say, listen to me. He sells 500 units a month. You don't sell anything. You add stuff. But there may come a moment, that's not a life course, that's a right now course. There may come a moment where this guy just becomes not worth the hassle. And you finally say to yourself, I can't afford you. This guy, I can't afford this guy. I'd rather have 2 salesmen that will sell 300 units each and turn their expense accounts in on time. So it feels like you're whimsical. You're not whimsical. You're responding to a sound in the engine nobody else can hear. What you have to know is there are people who poke their heads out of the womb and look around the delivery room and their first word is not mama or dada. They say purchase order. They love it. Purchase order. It's the word of God. Purchase order. The youth pastor and the worship leader think that person is the Antichrist. So there have to come times when you say to the church administrator, okay, look, the youth pastor, he didn't get the form filled out on the van and the driver and all. I understand, but we got youth camp this week and we're going to let him take it and go. We'll work with him on, but what we got to do is get these kids to youth camp. So, and remember, the youth pastor is only 12. So we're going to let it go. Then there come other times when you have to get in the youth pastor's face and say, don't worry about me firing you. Don't worry, if you don't fill the form, don't worry about that. I will not fire you. I'm going to kill you. I will park you under the van and drive it over. And so the problem is that as you move back and forth between these, somebody on one side or the other says, that's not what you said. So let me conclude with this and we'll take a few questions and we'll come back at 10:45 for some more. Here we are. The most complete person in God that's ever lived is Jesus, and he was the freest. He was the freest in God. So as a result of that, Jesus looked to people on the outside all the time as being unpredictable. And it was a constant challenge for his enemies. Case in point, the control people caught a woman in adultery. The King James Version in its graphic language says, in the act. So she is hauled from a bed of adultery into a street, thrown at Jesus' feet, not really because they are outraged at the adultery, really because they want to teach Jesus a control lesson. The control mechanism is what? The law. There's nothing more controlling than the law. The law says she should die. What do you say? So they're asking Jesus, are you in favor of control or the kind of chaos where people are sleeping around? And Jesus dismisses them with a wave of his hand. He says, absolutely, follow the law. But we're all going to follow the law. Whoever has never turned in a purchase order late, let him cast the first stone. Beginning with the eldest, they drop their stones and move away. And he says to her, where are they that condemned thee? Gone, sir, every one. Neither do I condemn thee. Go thy way and sin no more. Now there is a control statement in that, right? Go thy way and sin no more. But let's be honest. It's a wee bit frivolous. We're talking about adultery. Go thy way and sin no more. Okay. God doesn't like adultery. Go home. Then Jesus goes to the temple where the money changers, the worst thing they're doing is jacking up the price on turtle doves. And Jesus wigs out. It says he braids rope into whip. He's kicking their tables over and hitting them in the face with a rope and calling them snakes' babies. Do you think that there might have been somebody on the edge of the crowd that was saying, wonder whatever happened to go thy way and sin no more? Right? Somebody's hitting you in the face with a rope and kicking your business over. I don't think anybody was singing Gentle Jesus, Meek and Mild. So what's that about? What's that about? Jesus has his ear to the human engine in a way that nobody else could. This woman, he's saying, look, A, where is the man? She wasn't committing adultery like alone. So he's saying, this poor creature, she's lonely and disaffected, and somebody said, I love you and you're beautiful. She's to be pitied as much as she is to be condemned. Go home. Don't get in this situation anymore. But these people, they're making merchandise of God. This is a sin against the house of God, and it's a sin against the God of the house. This is serious. So, your 23-year-old youth pastor sends a stupid text to a 19-year-old girl. And you say to the board, let's save this kid. This is a good kid. He's retarded. But he's not evil. So let's work with him. I can teach him. We'll put him in some, let's work with him. Then a member of the board gets frisky with a lady in the prayer meeting, and you make him resign from the board and stand down, and everybody says, what about the youth pastor? What about the youth pastor? And you say, yeah, see, he's 22 and he's retarded. You're 64 and you touch that woman where you weren't supposed to touch her in the context of prayer. This is a different thing. It's the only way to lead effectively and efficiently. But remember, I just don't like to sail into port under false colors. Don't call me when you say, Dr. Mark, somebody is mad at me all the time. If you don't want to be the head cook, don't put on the tall hat. Okay, God bless you.